Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. This video is going to be my Geekly wrap-up for March 30th through April 5th, and let me tell you, this week has been a year. So this week saw the first ever virtual meeting of my bookstore's romance book club that I have been attending. It also saw, thankfully, the first decrease in number of hospitalizations for COVID-19 related symptoms in my state of Washington, which is very heartening news. It means that all of our hard work with social distancing and staying home to stay healthy is working. So that's been exciting. I definitely do feel though like I'm starting to lose a little bit track of time and like where I am positioned in time and space, and I know that this is going to keep continuing on for weeks yet to come, so forgive me if I seem a little bit spaced out during this video, but I just kind of feel a little fuzzy-headed about all of this, but I am really glad that it seems that Washington is doing its level best to flatten the curve, and I hope that you are safe and doing well wherever you are. So let's go ahead and get into the books for this week. So this week I managed to finish one book, 2 graphic novels, 2 sort of like Kindle short story type things, and play 2 board games. So the book that I finished, just in time for our first ever virtual book club, was The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. This is a contemporary romance novel about a woman named Lena. She is an Afro-Brazilian woman who is a wedding planner that was jilted at the altar years ago and now is having to work on a big project for her job with the man who jilted her and his brother. So she has to basically partner up with the brother whom she's starting to develop feelings for, and the brother's starting to develop feelings for her, which is especially weird because Max, the brother, is the person that convinced Andrew, the jilting brother, to jilt Lena in the first. I thought that this book was really amazing. I have only ever really encountered the sort of wedding planner finds love thing in the movie The Wedding Planner with Jennifer Lopez, so that was kind of what I expected going into this book. What I did not expect was that this was just going to be a really heartwarming romance to read. I love it in romance books when the characters like get into their feelings and their communication things that they have to work through. I really appreciated the way that Mia Sosa also highlighted the importance of in an interracial relationship for the person who is the white partner to like be understanding of the fact that it might be more difficult for Lena as a woman of color to open up to Max, her white partner, emotionally, because she talks about how she had gotten fired from a job previously for having what would be considered a quote-unquote normal reaction to something bad that happened, except because of her gender and her race, her bosses like took it way out of proportion and she was disproportionately punished, you know, by losing her job for being open and honest about what she was really thinking and feeling. That was something that super stood out to me about this book. I believe Mia Sosa is also Afro-Brazilian. I know that she definitely mentioned having Brazilian heritage. I think she's also Afro-Brazilian like her protagonist. So if I can find details on that, this will count for reading 30 books by Black authors this year. I also read the novella Can't Escape Love by Alyssa Cole, which, if this, you know, calculation is all correct, means that right now, in April, I have actually met 13 books by Black authors, which is the total number of books by Black authors that I read last year. So definitely think that that project is on track to get me to 30 books by Black authors this year. Can't Escape Love is a love story about this girl named Reggie, and she is a Black woman who uses a wheelchair because she had an illness that basically left her with a disability she acquired later in life. She runs a sort of geeky nerd, and she is starting to fall for this guy that she met online called Gus. She doesn't know anything about Gus except that she loves tuning into his live streams where he solves puzzles because he has the most soothing, beautiful voice that is the only thing that can cure her insomnia. So when she reaches out to him asking to basically pay him for a recording of his voice, he's a little bit confused but agrees to go along with it. And then as they gradually meet and get together in person, they learn that they have a lot more interests in common than they thought, and they start to sort of fall for each other. Gus is also a character who's on the autism spectrum, so there's disability representation for both of the partners in the romance, which is not something that I have ever encountered in a romance novel. And also means that now I can finally make my video about romance and disability, because I feel like I have now acquired enough good representation of disability in books that I can actually make this video. So keep your eyes peeled for that. What I really liked about this book is the fact that disability was something that was important to discuss in the context of the relationship and the identities of our main character and her love interest, but there was absolutely no ableist focus on the sort of typical narrative of having to overcome your disability or trying to basically see an abled life as inherently more valuable and more worthy of love than a disabled one. I really liked that none of that was in the book. I really liked that these characters had lives and interests and passions outside of their disability. That wasn't the only defining thing about their character. One of these days I am actually going to read an entire full Alyssa Cole novella, but right now, or a novel, but right now it's just been the novellas, but I really enjoyed it. I do think that because it's a novella, it did mean that the action of the plot and basically all of the series of events leading up to the main characters actually meeting each other did all happen really quickly. I get it because the book is really short, like it is not a full-length work, so I understand that you kind of have to get past that really quickly so you can write about the relationship, but that was something that kind of jarred me a little bit, but I really enjoyed it and I would highly recommend it. I also read Gifts of Spring, which is a new novella by Shira Glassman. I had pre-ordered this as a little Kindle book when it came out, and I'm just now getting around to reading it. It was very short, very cute story of a trans woman that is falling in love with a bisexual man who is like a circus performer, and basically they have this kind of forbidden love thing going on because this takes place in the Middle Ages in a town where the man is Jewish and Jews are not welcome in the town in the Middle Ages. So they basically fall in love because they're bonding over being outcast in a town that doesn't understand them. It was very short and sweet, maybe a little bit too short, also because I feel like the action was sped up so much that it was really hard to imagine that these people could be in love, deeply in love, just like that. So, you know, it was still a fun read. I still really love reading Shira Glassman's work. This just wasn't necessarily a huge standout for me. It was cute, it was entertaining, and I enjoyed it. And that is all. And then I finished reading 2 graphic novels this week. One of them was a buddy read that Rachel Marie from Rachel Marie's Book Journey and the Bookie Trials, you probably know her if you're on BookTube, and I were buddy reading, and that was Monstrous Volume 4, The Chosen by Marjorie Liu and illustrated by Sana Takeda. This book is the 4th in a series, so I will try to say stuff about it without giving too much away. But suffice it to say that the war between the humans and the Arcanics, who are these different types of fantastical races almost, is finally coming to a head. Micah has a moment where she really has to confront her family history that she has with her father, who she hasn't seen since she was really little, and Kipa, who is the little fox girl, gets to go off and discover a secret about herself that she didn't know before. And that is all I'm going to say, because this is a series, and I don't want to give things away if you are not caught up or you haven't started reading it yet. I did think that the plot of this was a lot more convoluted and hard to follow than some of the earlier volumes when we do spend more time focused on Micah as the main character. I think I'm going to need to go back and reread it to make sure that I actually have all of the details and everything, but it was kind of hard to follow in that sense. Of course, that could also just be the stress talking, because I have definitely found that even when I'm rereading books that I have already read before, my concentration is not what it usually is when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. So there's that. I also finished rereading the hardcover volume 2 of Paper Girls. I had already read these, oh, it's got so many fingerprints on it. I had already read these comics before, but Sean gave me this lovely, like, shiny hardcover compilation of them as a Christmas present this year, and I wanted to make sure that I got the entire series read before I read the final volume, which is volume 6. So I'm now about 2/3 of the way through my reread. This definitely is important content, but now that I know that the arc is not wrapping up for another 2 volumes, parts of it do feel a little bit like filler. Just as we spend so much time going and like visiting all of the paper girls throughout various points in time. Again, it's hard to like give a review of this without giving things away, but I think that this is a really excellent series if you like comic books and time travel-y type stories, if you're into Stranger Things or the X-Files or any of those other weird aliens may exist kind of stories. I would definitely recommend the Paper Girls series. So those are the books that I read this week. We also played 2 board games. One of our things that we're doing to give ourselves something to look forward to every day is that we have a schedule that says one day a week we're going to play a board game that we haven't played in a long time, and then one day a week we're going to play a new one. So the old board game that we played this week was Islebound. This is designed by Ryan Lowcat. He is a sort of one-man board game design and artwork studio in Utah, and he makes all of the games himself. And this is a game where you are captains of glorious sea vessels trying to sail around and win the most renown for your seafaring empire. Like most board games, the way that you win renown is you build buildings and you turn things into other things. Now, this game, I remember being really excited to play it when I first got it because I really liked Ryan Lowcat's game Above and Below. I think it combines a lot of the fun strategy of a typical worker placement game with adventure because there is a little storybook that you can read little bits through depending on the actions you take. You can choose to build your buildings above ground or go exploring below ground. I really like the synthesis of those 2 genres. Islebound is supposed to take place in the same world as Above and Below, but be seafaring, and you're supposed to be able to mix and match some of the game pieces from Islebound with your Above and Below villages. However, I don't think that Islebound is as smooth of a play experience as Above and Below, and I don't think that that can entirely be attributed to how old the game is, relatively speaking. Sometimes board games don't age very well because design is an iterative process, and board game sort of design tenets and such change over the years, and you can definitely tell some of the mechanics in this game mark it as an older game, but I don't think that it's struggling just because it's an older game design. I think a bit of it is that there's too many different systems going on for you to have a really good idea of strategy or scarcity or anything like that. So every time that you take your turn, you have to sail a certain number of spaces around the little chain of islands on the board. It's a board where all the pieces can get scrambled up, so it changes every time. And then you can take an action. The actions are usually things like paying some cost in order to visit a city and take the benefit of visiting it. You can also conquer towns either through military strength or through diplomacy, and that's where I think that there was just a lot going on that made the game kind of unbalanced, because there were definitely bits where I ended up with really good luck of just drawing a bunch of things that allowed me to conquer cities by diplomacy that made the military conquering strategy basically totally unnecessary and unhelpful for the entire game, which doesn't really work if you are trying to encourage players to interact with each other and strategize and gain points through other means than building buildings. You can get points through buildings in this game, but not nearly as many as you do from going around and putting your little influence tokens on there. So didn't enjoy it as much as I used to. I think it's definitely showing not just its age, but some of the flaws in its design. Will I ever play it again? I don't know, not really sure. Then we also played a new game, which is in the Imperial Settlers series. This is called Empires of the North. I've never actually played Imperial Settlers, but it's very similar to board games where you build buildings to gain points, because that's what board games are, really. And in this one, you are playing as a group of different sort of tribes from the global north. You can be like Scottish clans, you can be indigenous people that are living high above the Arctic Circle, and you are gathering your resources in order to build your buildings and gain points from them. I thought this game was pretty cute. It's very adorably illustrated in this precious little chibi style. There was one thing that really bugged me about it though, and that's the fact that the Inuit people are depicted as having penguins as pets. Come on, humans don't live at the South Pole, penguins don't live at the North Pole. I know that they're adorable, but there are so many like actual Arctic marine animals or marine life that you could have had them have as pets. And why did you choose penguins? It just bothers me because I know that that would be terribly inaccurate, and yeah, that was just a hard thing for me to get over. This game is pretty fun. I think it's a very good entry-level game because it's very easy to understand, and all of the text that describes what you are able to do in the game is actually written out on the player cards. So it makes it very easy to figure out, okay, what can I do with this card in my hand? Can I afford it? What will I get when I build it? How will it benefit me? I feel like the logical flow of the game and the way that it's designed is really well done. It does get really clunky though at the end of the game because you essentially end up with this huge tableau of something like, I don't know, I think I had maybe 18 cards in front of me by the end of the game, and they all do different things. Many of them have slightly different actions from each other that you can choose to take or not. You can also select actions from a common wheel that anybody can choose to use. And it was very difficult at that point to be able to figure out what exactly I could do on my turn out of potentially, you know, 12, 13, 15 options, and also to pay attention to what my opponent was doing. I just kind of gave up at that point. So it does get kind of complicated and convoluted there at the end, but I think if you're just looking for like a really simple, lightweight Euro game to play or to introduce someone that maybe isn't a big gamer, I feel like this would be a good game to play with, you know, parents, younger siblings, something like that, people that are just starting to get into board games. And that's a really good game. And that's gonna do it for this week. Or year, depending on your perspective. I hope that you all are doing really well. Please leave me a comment down below with something that you've been enjoying this past week. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of what I do, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. That way you get updates every time I post a new video. As always, thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.